They call it a wildflower garden. I call it a mess. I see her come out on Saturday mornings, nearly afternoon, puts on a pair of floral gardening gloves, the only floral thing you'll see there, pokes a little trowel about for half an hour, then goes back inside. Fair question, how come I have the time to watch her? I've been up since dawn, and I'm having a cup of tea. Even then, I'm not doing nothing. I'll be potting or painting. If I feel I deserve a rest, I might even be reading Gardener's World. So don't be thinking you've caught out some nosy, interfering old hypocrite. The front garden's all right, passable. He's in charge of that. Mows the lawn, does a bit of weeding, some nice roses and a pretty lilac tree. Mind you, they were there before they moved in, and I've never seen him deadheading. He's got a full-time job. I worked 5.5 days a week, and I've never been ashamed of my garden. But they're different. They want to watch TV when they get home. He'll probably have work-related stress, whatever that's supposed to be. But her, no excuse. She's got the whole week, and she's not cooking. How do I know? The pizza delivery boy nearly ran over my toes the other day. That's how I know. So what's she doing? Interior decorating, perhaps? But you buy a property, not just the interior. That means you're responsible for the whole place. Guttering, front door, pointing, garden. Since 9 this morning I've been out cutting the shrubs well back. The ground's muddy, yes. Don't expect anyone to mow the lawn or dig, not when the bulbs are just coming through. But there's no excuse not to prune. Do it now and you're set up for the year. Chances of seeing them in the garden? Nil. He'll be tapping away on his computer. God only knows what she'll be doing. When we first came here, there was so much undergrowth that when I cut it away, I found a third of the garden I had no idea was there. That's what happens if you let a garden go wild. Weeds take over. Everything gets tangled. In short, you've got a mess. It took me months to clear it away, and now, next door, they're trying to turn a perfectly good garden wild. It beats me. With the land I recovered, I told my lad he could plant whatever he liked, his bit of the garden. Never made anything of it. I shouldn't have expected him to, I suppose. You might say I'm obsessed, but whether you're working indoors or out, you're bound to see things. He leaves for work about 7:30, and they say this generation works too hard, or too many hours at least. She gets herself in gear about 10, from what I can make out. If I'm in the garden and she's there, I'll say good morning to her. If I'm at the window when she passes, I'll give a cheery wave. She's friendly enough, just lazy. None of my business, but I can't forgive that in someone who should have all the energy of youth and has none of the child-rearing responsibilities. If I were a gossip, I'd say she was waiting for him to be well clear of the house before running off to her fancy man. I know. I say fancy man deliberately. What should I say? Lover. Well, then she goes off to see her lover. As for the wildflower garden, I wonder what she tells him. It took me ages to get the nettles just right. Daisies don't plant themselves. Well, they do, of course, self-seed. But how else can she account for all her free time? Oh, you don't think a young woman has to account for her time? Tell that to her husband. He must be an awful idiot. She'll do a half an hour in the garden, then sweep the blonde fringe out of her eyes, throw down the trowel, leaving the few weeds she's dug up to take root again, and go back indoors. I mean, to do what? To be fair, I've never seen her drunk. Him, yes. I've seen him trying to work out which key to put in the lock. Not her. I suppose they might take drugs. But I wouldn't know what to look for. He knocked here once. Apologised for calling so early. He was on his way to work. Told him he hadn't woken me. I'd been up since 6. He didn't know where to look. Said his wife wanted to borrow my wheelbarrow. They don't have one. Why she couldn't ask herself, he didn't say. I left it in their drive. Stood there for a week. In the end, I fetched it back. I don't know what that was all about, I'm sure. This morning I took the shears and billhook into the back garden. Looking through the lilac, I saw her lying on their lawn. The grass was so thick you would have thought she was floating in a green pool. Daisies and buttercups all round her. She had dark glasses on and those headphones. Not much else, though. I got the shears. The lilac is like a jungle just there, spilling over from their side. She could have been looking right at me or fast asleep. You never know with those sunglasses, do you? She must have been there an hour. How she didn't burn, I don't know. They say you have to put on hats and sun cream and everything now, don't they? For some time I didn't prune or cut away anything. It was like watching a wild animal. How long I stayed watching, I couldn't say. I heard the milkman and the postman, and they're usually half an hour apart. There was a half-moon of lipstick on a glass just in reach of her fingers. Nothing moved around her. Surrounded by the glossy blades of grass, her face shone out like a peach. She lifted her hand. I caught my breath. Up till then, I'd been thinking of her as a picture. The colours were so strong. Her forefinger and thumb gripped the arm of her sunglasses and moved them down her nose. She was staring right at me. Looked at me for a full minute and I couldn't look away. I didn't know what she was thinking. Was she laughing at the silly old man? Did she think I was some kind of peeping Tom? She pushed the glasses back to cover her eyes as rain began to bounce off the lilac leaves. She went in. I stayed. When I go out now, she's sunbathing, and there's nowhere I can go where I can't see her in some way. I have to come back indoors. I don't want people to think I'm a pervert. But it's not that. It's as if my garden is not my own. I'm not safe there. I thought I was watching her, but she was watching me, trapping me. I can't go out. They're spending more time in the garden now, like us when we first moved in. I get silly ideas like when it was my boy kicking his ball too near the greenhouse. He never could kick straight. Or the wife hanging out the washing and shading the seedlings. I know I don't have to worry about them anymore, not them, but I still can't go out. What makes me really angry is that I haven't been able to get any work done at all. Went out early to do some weeding, but she was just over the fence. I had to come straight back in. And reading in the house is impossible. When Gardener's World is delivered, I can't settle down because I keep thinking he's going to knock again. This morning, on his way to work, he peered in the window. I had to step back into the shadow. Now I can't even have the lights on. It's very inconsiderate. With any luck, they might go on holiday. I hope they do soon, otherwise my garden will look worse than theirs. I should have planted the bulbs by the end of last month, but it's impossible with their behaviour. Perhaps I should have said something, but how can you bring the subject up with a near-naked woman? What are the other neighbours going to say? They still call it a wildflower garden, and they can call it what they like, but what will people call mine? By rights, I should be able to keep some sort of eye on the front, but it's no use. The grass will be touching the window ledge soon. There was a knock at my door today. At first I thought it was him asking for the wheelbarrow again, but it was a man from the council. Asked if I needed help looking after the garden. Was it too much for me? I didn't even answer him. I shut the door in his face. They come and talk to me, but does anyone talk to the neighbours, ask if they need help with their garden? I nearly demanded to know what the hell they were playing at this afternoon. If it's a wildflower garden, what's he doing mowing the lawn? Churning great ugly wheels in the grass, more like. She was out there with a trowel and a new wheelbarrow full of bulbs. They've trimmed the lilacs that hung over their side of the fence and cut back that berberis, so now I can't help but see everything. She's put some winter pansies in stone tubs all round their patio and cut back the honeysuckle. Now what's so wild about that? That man from the council came again, with a friend this time. They looked so worried, their eyes all creased as if they were going to cry. Was there anyone they could call, a relative perhaps? They've got it in their heads there's some kid who's forgotten his old dad. Well, there was a kid. Just the one lad. My wife was in labour for hours when he was born. Doctor told me I may as well go to the pub or go home. Of course, I had the allotment then, so I decided to put in some time there. It was getting cold, and I wanted to cut up some old carpet and put it round the plants. I didn't forget her. In fact, I was just wishing it was later in the year so I had some flowers to take when I realised the time and dropped the Stanley knife. Picked it up, of course, put it back in the toolbox, locked up the shed, and drove to the hospital. I couldn't buy flowers. The shops were shut. I wish I'd planted hellebores so as I'd have a few winter flowers, but I've never liked the way they snake along the ground. It was past visiting hours when I got to the hospital, but at least I could find out if the kid had arrived yet, if it was a boy or girl. The nurse had me wait. The doctor came, told me it was a boy, said I was to make the most of the few years we had. I didn't tell them two from the council all this. What were they going to do, bring him to life so I could watch him grow again and die? Fix the old girl's heart so I could hold her again? Brush the hair and tears from her eyes? Yesterday he was putting a swing up on the lawn, fixing it into the soil with concrete. He noticed me and shrugged his shoulders. A bit premature, I suppose, he said. But I said nothing. I just looked at him. My garden's choked with brambles. A wilderness.